My name is Michael Peterson. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a senior software engineer at a tech company here in Seattle, Washington. I've always been methodical, detail-oriented, and fiercely loyal to the people I care about. For 5 years, I thought I'd found my life partner in Laura Cooper. We'd been living together in our Capitol Hill apartment for 3 years, splitting the $4,600 monthly rent down the middle. I was ready to marry this woman. Hell, I'd already dropped over $29,000 on what I thought would be our dream wedding. Laura worked at a boutique marketing agency downtown, handling campaigns for local restaurants and startups. She made decent money, around $75,000 a year, but nothing compared to my software engineer salary of $162,000. I didn't mind. I loved her ambition, her creativity, the way she'd get excited talking about her latest client's brand strategy over our Sunday morning coffee at Victrola on Pine Street. But something changed about 8 months ago, back in January 2025. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists like this video, and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. It started small. Laura became glued to her iPhone 16, constantly texting during dinner, claiming it was urgent work stuff. She'd leave early for the office and come home after 9 p.m., exhausted and irritable. When I'd suggest we grab dinner at our favorite spot, Canlis, or catch a Mariners game, she'd say she was drowning in this new project and needed to work weekends too. I'm not the jealous type, never have been. But when your girlfriend of 5 years suddenly treats her phone like it's classified government intel, you start paying attention. She'd angle the screen away from me, take calls in the bathroom, and jump whenever a notification came through. Still, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. The marketing world can be demanding, especially in a competitive city like Seattle. Then my buddy Jake texted me something in mid-March that made my blood run cold. Dude, I think I saw Laura going into the Fairmont Olympic Hotel with some older guy around lunchtime. They looked close. The Fairmont Olympic. That's a $600 a night hotel downtown. Not exactly where you'd have a business lunch unless you were trying to impress someone very important. Or hide something very personal. When I casually asked Laura about her day that evening, she mentioned grabbing a quick sandwich at her desk and working through lunch. No mention of any hotel meeting, no mention of any client entertainment. Just another lie added to what I was beginning to realize was a growing pile of deception. That's when I decided to stop being the trusting boyfriend and start being the observant engineer. I didn't confront her, I didn't accuse. I simply began to document everything with the same methodical approach I used to debug complex code problems at work. And what I discovered over the following 2 weeks would shatter everything I thought I knew about the woman I was planning to marry. The next morning after Jake's text, I started my investigation the way any good software engineer would, by gathering data. Laura had an old iPhone 14 that she'd upgraded from in early 2025, but it was still logged into our shared iCloud account. She'd forgotten about it, and honestly, so had I until that moment. The device was sitting in our bedroom drawer, and when I powered it up, it automatically synced her recent messages. What I found made my stomach drop. Hundreds of texts between Laura and someone named Paul H., dating back to January 2025. The early messages were professional enough. Discussions about campaign deadlines, client feedback, the usual work stuff. But by February, the tone had shifted completely. "Can't wait to see you tonight? Same room?" From Paul. "I'll be there by 7. "Michael thinks I'm working late again." From Laura. "You look incredible in that red dress. Keep it for next time." From Paul. "I feel terrible lying to him, but I can't stop thinking about you." From Laura. I sat there in our living room, scrolling through months of betrayal, feeling like someone had punched me in the chest. Paul H. That had to be Paul Harrison, her boss at the agency. I'd met him twice at company parties. A smooth-talking guy in his early 50s, always wearing expensive suits and talking about his weekend trips to his cabin in the San Juan Islands. He was married with 2 teenage kids. His wife seemed nice enough, One of those put-together suburban moms who drove a white Tesla Model Y and posted Instagram photos of their family hiking trips. But the messages revealed a different side of Paul Harrison. This was a man who was using his corporate credit card to book hotel rooms at the W Seattle and the Grand Hyatt. A man who was buying my girlfriend expensive gifts and paying for her Uber rides across town. A man who had been systematically seducing his employee while maintaining his perfect family man facade. The evidence was overwhelming. Screenshots of dinner receipts from high-end restaurants like the Metropolitan Grill and Altura, places where a single meal cost more than Laura and I would spend on groceries in a week. Photos she'd sent him wearing lingerie I'd never seen before. Calendar invites for client meetings that I now realized were rendezvous appointments. One message thread from early March made everything crystal clear. "My wedding is in 6 months," Laura had written. "I know. We'll figure something out. Maybe after you're married, it'll be easier to get away," Paul replied. "I can't keep doing this to Michael. He's a good guy. But you're not going to stop, are you?" "No, I can't. I need this." That last line hit me like a freight train. She needed this. Not him, not the affair, but the lifestyle he provided. The expensive dinners, the luxury hotels, the designer gifts. She was planning to marry me for stability while keeping Paul around for excitement and financial benefits. I spent the next week methodically documenting everything. I took screenshots, saved emails, and even discovered that Paul had been using his company's expense account to fund their affair. As someone who works in tech, I knew these kinds of financial improprieties could get both of them fired. But I wasn't ready to play that card yet. Laura had no idea I knew anything. She continued her routine of fake late nights and mysterious phone calls. She even had the audacity to show me a new Apple Watch Ultra 2, claiming she'd won it in some company raffle. I smiled and congratulated her, all while knowing Paul had bought it for her at the University Village Apple Store for $799. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was showing off a gift from her lover while planning our wedding. The breaking point came when I discovered they had a regular Thursday night arrangement at the Fairmont Olympic. Same room, same time, every week since February. Laura would tell me she had a standing client dinner those nights. I verified this by checking our shared Google Calendar. She'd even created fake entries for Morrison account dinner to cover her tracks. That's when I realized this wasn't just a fling or a moment of weakness. This was a calculated, ongoing deception that had been happening right under my nose for most of our engagement period. She was living a double life, and she was damn good at it. But here's the thing about being methodical. It gives you options. And I was about to exercise the nuclear option at the worst possible moment for both of them. Our rehearsal dinner was scheduled for Friday night, August 29th, at Salty's on Alki Beach, with a perfect view of the Seattle skyline. 72 guests were confirmed, including Laura's entire family, my parents and siblings, our wedding party, and several colleagues from both our jobs. Paul and his wife Rebecca were invited, of course, since he was Laura's boss, and we needed to maintain professional relationships. I'd reserved the Duwamish room, which could comfortably accommodate our group with panoramic water views. I had 24 hours to decide how I wanted to handle this. I could confront Laura privately, call off the wedding quietly, and try to salvage some dignity for both of us. Or I could let everyone know exactly who they were celebrating. The engineer in me chose the most efficient solution. Friday evening arrived with typical Seattle weather, a light drizzle that made the city lights reflect beautifully off Elliott Bay. Salty's was packed with our guests, everyone dressed up and excited for what they thought would be a celebration of love and commitment. The Duwamish room was perfect for our group, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water and downtown skyline. I arrived early, wearing my best navy suit and a smile that felt like it was carved from stone. Laura looked stunning in a black cocktail dress, probably another gift from Paul, though she'd told me she'd bought it at Nordstrom Rack. She was glowing, playing the perfect bride-to-be, accepting congratulations and compliments from family members who had flown in from as far as Chicago and Phoenix. Paul and Rebecca Harrison arrived fashionably late, around 7:30. He was wearing what looked like a $2,500 Tom Ford suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, exuding that confident executive charm that had probably seduced half the women in his office over the years. Rebecca looked elegant in a wine-colored dress, her blonde hair in a sophisticated updo. She was carrying a Chanel purse that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payment. I watched Paul greet Laura with a professional handshake and polite smile, the picture of appropriate workplace boundaries. But I caught the way his eyes lingered on her, the slight brush of his fingers against her wrist. Rebecca was completely oblivious, chatting with my mother about their recent vacation to Maui. The first hour went smoothly. Cocktails flowed, appetizers were passed around, and everyone was having a great time sharing embarrassing stories about Laura and me. My best man, David, gave a hilarious speech about our college days at University of Washington. Laura's maid of honor talked about their friendship since high school. It was everything a rehearsal dinner should be, warm, funny, and full of love. I waited until after the main course when everyone was relaxed and slightly buzzed from the wine. The restaurant staff had just cleared the plates, and people were settling in with their after-dinner drinks. That's when I stood up and tapped my wine glass with a fork. "Excuse me, everyone," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room. "I'd like to say a few words before we wrap up tonight." The room quieted down, all eyes turning to me. Laura smiled up at me from her seat, probably expecting a romantic speech about how much I loved her and couldn't wait to start our life together. Paul was leaning back in his chair, looking comfortable and unsuspecting. "First, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," I began, pulling out my phone. "It means the world to Laura and me that you've traveled from all over the country to celebrate with us. I also want to thank Paul Harrison, Laura's boss, for being such a generous mentor to her over the past 8 months." Paul's smile flickered slightly. Rebecca looked pleased, probably thinking I was acknowledging her husband's professional support. In fact, Paul has been so generous that I thought everyone should know just how much he's invested in Laura's career development. I opened my phone to the screenshots I'd prepared. For instance, last Thursday night when Laura told me she was working late on the Morrison account, Paul was actually treating her to a very expensive dinner at the Metropolitan Grill. The room started to feel the shift in energy. A few people looked confused. Laura's face went pale. Now that might seem like normal client entertainment, except the Morrison account doesn't exist, and they weren't discussing business. I began reading directly from my phone. Paul texted Laura at 6:15 p.m. "Can't wait to have you to myself tonight. Same room after dinner?" And Laura replied, "I hate lying to Michael, but I can't resist you." The silence was deafening. You could hear the rain hitting the windows and the distant sound of traffic on Alki Avenue. Laura's hand flew to her mouth. Paul's face had gone ashen. "Oh, but it gets better," I continued, my voice steady and calm. "Here's one from July. That lingerie you bought me is perfect. Michael has no idea where it came from." And Paul's response, "Anything for my favorite employee, can't wait to see you wear it tomorrow night at the Fairmont." Rebecca Harrison's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. The sound seemed to break everyone out of their shock. Laura's mother gasped. My father looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "Michael, stop," Laura whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Why should I stop?" I asked, looking directly at her. "We're among family and friends. Shouldn't they know who they're really celebrating tomorrow?" I turned back to my phone. "Here's my personal favorite from just 2 weeks ago. I can't wait to marry Michael. The financial security will be perfect, and then we can be even more discreet about our arrangement." That last one was the nuclear bomb. The room erupted in gasps and shocked murmurs. Laura buried her face in her hands and started sobbing. Paul finally found his voice. This is completely inappropriate," he stammered, standing up from his chair. "These messages are taken out of context. This is a private matter between colleagues that's been misinterpreted." "Misinterpreted?" I turned to face him directly. "Which part is misinterpreted, Paul? The 8 months of hotel receipts charged to your corporate card? The Uber rides you paid for to shuttle my fiancée to your secret meetings? Or the Apple Watch you bought her that she claimed was a company raffle prize?" Rebecca Harrison suddenly stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Her face was white with fury. "You son of a bitch," she hissed at her husband. "You lying, cheating son of a bitch." She grabbed her purse and walked out without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. The sound of the front door slamming echoed through the restaurant. Paul looked around desperately, seeing the disgust and judgment on every face in the room. "Rebecca, wait," he called out, but she was already gone. He turned back to me, his composure completely shattered. "You have no right to destroy my marriage over a misunderstanding." "The only thing I destroyed," I said quietly, "was the lie you two have been living." Laura finally looked up from her hands, mascara streaming down her cheeks, and tried to salvage what was left of her dignity. "Michael, please, we need to talk about this privately. This isn't fair to our families." "Fair?" I asked, my voice still perfectly controlled. "You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you spent 8 months planning our wedding while sleeping with your boss? Was it fair when you let me pay for the entire $32,000 reception while you were getting designer gifts from another man? Was it fair when you looked me in the eye every morning and told me you loved me while planning to continue this affair after our marriage?" My mother was crying quietly. Laura's father, a proud man who'd driven up from Portland for the weekend, looked like someone had punched him in the gut. The entire wedding party sat in stunned silence, their celebration completely shattered. "I need everyone to understand something," I continued, addressing the room. "I didn't discover this affair yesterday or last week. I've known for 2 weeks. I've had time to process this, to be angry, to be hurt, and to decide how to handle it. I chose to wait until tonight because I wanted everyone who cares about Laura and me to understand exactly why there won't be a wedding tomorrow." Paul made one last desperate attempt to control the narrative. "Look, Michael, you're clearly upset, and you have every right to be. But destroying people's marriages and careers over a workplace relationship that got out of hand isn't going to solve anything." "Workplace relationship?" I pulled up another screenshot. "Is that what you call it when you text my fiancée? Tell Michael you're working late. I booked the penthouse suite at the Grand Hyatt for the whole weekend. Pack the black dress I bought you." I looked directly at Paul. "That was sent 3 days ago, Paul. 3 days before my wedding." The blood drained from his face completely. Around the room, I could see people pulling out their phones, probably texting other family members and friends who weren't there. This story was going to spread far beyond this restaurant. Laura's younger sister, Ashley, who'd flown in from Denver to be in the wedding, stood up abruptly. "I can't listen to this anymore," she said, glaring at Laura. "How could you do this to Michael? How could you do this to all of us?" She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "I'm not standing up in a wedding that's built on lies." One by one, other guests began to leave. My groomsmen looked embarrassed and confused. Laura's college friends whispered among themselves and quietly gathered their things. Within 20 minutes, what had been a room full of 72 celebrating guests had dwindled to maybe 15 people, mostly immediate family who felt obligated to stay. Paul realized his career was probably over. In Washington state, companies take sexual harassment and workplace misconduct very seriously, especially when corporate funds are involved. He knew the screenshots I had would be enough to get him fired and potentially blacklisted from the marketing industry in Seattle. He made one final plea. "Michael, I understand you're angry, but think about what you're doing. You're destroying more than just Laura and me. You're hurting innocent people, my children, my wife. Your wife and children were being hurt every time you checked into a hotel with my fiancée," I replied. "The only difference is now they know about it. And honestly, Paul, they deserve to know. Just like everyone in this room deserved to know who they were really celebrating." I put my phone away and looked around at the remaining guests. "I want to apologize to everyone who traveled here and spent money on wedding gifts and hotel rooms. I know this isn't how any of us expected tonight to end, but I couldn't stand at an altar tomorrow and promise to love and honor someone who's been lying to me for 8 months. Laura finally found her voice again. "Michael, I know what I did was wrong, but we can work through this. I love you. I was going to end things with Paul after the wedding. I got caught up in something I couldn't control." You were going to end it after the wedding, I asked. That's interesting, because here's a text from you to Paul from Tuesday morning. After I'm married, we'll have to be more careful, but I'm not ready to give this up. Michael will never suspect anything once we're settled into married life. That final revelation broke whatever was left of Laura's composure. She started sobbing uncontrollably, her shoulders shaking. Her mother tried to comfort her, but even she looked disgusted and disappointed. I stood up and straightened my jacket. I'm going home to pack Laura's things. I'll have them ready for pickup tomorrow. The wedding is obviously canceled. I've already called the venue and the vendors. Most of them were understanding about the circumstances. As I walked toward the door, my father caught up with me. Son, are you okay? Yeah, Dad. I'm actually relieved. Better to find out now than after 10 years of marriage and 2 kids. I drove home through the Seattle drizzle, feeling lighter than I had in months. The apartment felt peaceful without Laura's deceptive energy filling it. I spent the evening packing her belongings methodically, the same way I'd documented her affair. It's been 3 weeks since that night at Salty's, and the aftermath has been exactly what I expected. Paul Harrison was fired from his position after the company launched an internal investigation into his expense reports and workplace conduct. His wife Rebecca filed for divorce immediately, and from what I heard through mutual connections, she's taking him for everything he's worth. Laura moved back to Portland to live with her parents while she looks for work. Her reputation in Seattle's tight-knit marketing community is destroyed. Apparently, she tried to spin the story as a complicated situation, but the screenshots had already made their rounds through social media and professional networks. As for me, I've been fielding job offers from tech companies in other cities. Austin looks particularly appealing. No state income tax, booming tech scene, and 1,500 miles away from this mess. I'm planning to make the move by the end of the year. I learned something important that night at Salty's. The truth doesn't need to be shouted to be heard. Sometimes the most devastating revenge is simply letting people's own words and actions speak for themselves in front of the right audience. Today, I'm grateful I discovered who Laura really was before I signed a marriage certificate. Some people might say I was cruel to expose them so publicly, but I sleep well, knowing I saved myself from years of lies and potentially saved Rebecca Harrison from more years of unknowing betrayal. The best revenge isn't always elaborate or dramatic. Sometimes, it's just refusing to let liars control the narrative of your life. If you enjoyed this story, like this video, and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.